Morning, compatriots and friends. Thank you for joining us for this wonderful ceremony. We meet today to commemorate Patriots Joseph Dobson Sr. and Joseph Dobson Jr., who have answered the last call to duty. My name is Tom Lesser, and I have the honor of being the president of the Colonel Alexander Erwin Chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution. I will be your master of ceremonies for this commemoration. Thank you. All have come to pay tribute to these patriots. Assistant to the chaplain, Marty Vanderbilt, will now lead our invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we gather for this dedication, we ask your blessing upon each one of us. We thank you for this occasion as we honor the memory of Joseph Dobson Sr. and Jr. We honor their patriotism, their courage, their loyalty and faith, and their willingness to sacrifice to make our world a better place. We thank you, too, for America and all patriots that have given their liberties and privileges that we enjoy today. May we be willing to serve you and our nation as compatriots Joseph Dobson Sr. and Jr. did, and may the ideals that we remember from the past sustain us today and safeguard us tomorrow. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please stand if you are able. Color Guard Commander. The SAR pledge is in your program. Please join us. We, the descendants of the heroes of the American Revolution, who by their sacrifices established the United States of America, reaffirm our faith in the principles of liberty and our constitutional republic, and solemnly pledge ourselves to defend them against every foe. Please be seated if you have a seat, or on the ground if you so desire. As I said, I'm Tom Lesser, the president of the Colonel Alexander Erwin Chapter. The members of the chapter have heard me say this often, but it's, I think, always worth repeating. SAR does a number of things. The chapter is one of our chapters, one of the most active chapters in the country. The two things we do that I believe are most important are, one, recruit new members so that the organization can continue. But two, is to mark the graves of patriots so that these men and women are not forgotten. And I hope I'm not stealing any of Bill's lines, but particularly patriots such as these where you'd have no idea, A, that they were here, if Bill hadn't walked through the woods for I don't know how many months or years, and even if you came to this gravesite and saw that it said Dobson Cemetery, you'd have no way of knowing which ones were the patriots. So I think this is something very important to do. And now I will turn it over to Bill, who will tell you more about a lot of your relatives and about these patriots.
Thank you. I will try to make this about 2/3 as those that know that joke, they'll understand. Probably kind of go on a little bit. You've got a short biography of both Joseph Sr. and Jr. in your program. I'm not going to talk about that. What I'm going to talk about is knowing a little bit something about these people that you might not know. I know my kids and grandkids, and some of my cousins. Matter of fact, if you're related to the Dr. Dobson or Joseph Jr., raise your hand. I think that's probably the biggest family representation we've had at the several grave marking ceremonies we've done over the years, and that's remarkable. I know my Aunt Barbara there and her family came from Raleigh, and I would venture to guess she's the closest down the line of Joseph Jr. that's here. He would have been her third great-grandfather. So that's not that far in the past. And of course, Aunt Barbara's not that much older than me either. You know, she's only 15 years older than me. So, I'm not saying that you're older. That's right. You are too. Getting younger every day. But I wanted to, try to tell you a little bit about these folks that is not in a biography. They say you on your tombstone there's a born date and a died date with a dash in between. That date in the front and the date in the back is really not important. It's that dash. That's what's important. That's the life that these folks live. And so I'll tell you a little bit about Joseph Sr. that you might not know. Maybe some interesting information about him. He came here to America, I think, 1752 from England. He was a college-educated physician. Now, that was unique at the time here in the colonies to have a college-educated physician. He lived in Lunenburg County, Virginia for a while, and then about 1765, 67 or so, he moved here to this area, just down the Catawba River, near where, if you're local, you know where Glen Alpine is. He lived on that big, huge bend in the river. The River Club development is there now. That was his property. Interesting story about that. Son Will there was working for a surveyor company, maybe 20 or 25 years ago, and they were surveying that tract out of that property before the development was put in there. And fortunately, that survey that Dobson lived on had not been broken up at all. I mean, it passed down, hand over the years, but that tract was still there, 250 or 60 acre tract. I think Will said when they used their GPS satellite, laser guided surveying equipment, they came out to those meets and bounds, those points, and they were less than a foot or so off from a survey that was done in 1778. So, that's another aside story of Dr. Dobson. But on his plantation there, the word plantation, everybody thinks about Gone with the Wind and Tar and all that. 18th century plantation meant your farm, your house, where you live. That could be a one-room log cabin with a little old tiny garden out there, and that's called a plantation. Or it could have been a big fine house, and that's called a plantation. So plantation doesn't necessarily mean what we think it does when we're thinking Civil War, 1830s, 40s, 50s era. But anyway, on his plantation there, he ran a school. And one of his students was none other than Felix Walker. Now, Felix Walker should stick out in your mind. Felix Walker was with Daniel Boone when he crossed through the Cumberland Gap. Felix Walker later became state senator, represented Buncombe County area, and then went on to be one of the members of the first governments in Kentucky when the state of Kentucky was formed. And Felix Walker wrote in his journal, he said, "My father put me to school at Dr. Dobson's in 1772, and from him I have received the best education I've ever been in possession of." So he was rubbing hands, rubbing elbows with some folks that turned out to be really important people. He was also, Dr. Dobson was also a signer for the first petition to create the county of Burke. That was in 1771. Of course, that petition failed, and it was 1777 before Burke County was created. But if you look at his signature on that 1771 petition, and you look at the petition itself, it's obvious that he was the person who actually wrote that petition to create the new county. In 1770, he wrote out and was a witness to Joseph McDowell Sr., the father of Charles McDowell, Revolutionary War fame, wrote out his will and was a signer witness to the will of Joseph McDowell Sr. So they were trading hands back and forth there. He was higher up in the echelon, I guess you'd say, of folks. When they organized the Morgan District of Superior Court in 1782, he became the first clerk of Superior Court for the Morgan District. The Morgan District covered Burke, Rutherford, what later became Buncombe, across the mountains into Washington County, North Carolina, which is now Tennessee, and Sullivan County in Tennessee, at that time, of course, North Carolina. So that was a pretty big area, pretty big responsibility. In, I think, 1785, he decided, I think I can make a little bit more money being the entry taker of lands in Burke County. Charles McDowell previously had that position, and when Charles McDowell went to the state legislature, that left a vacancy there. So Dr. Dobson became the entry taker. The entry taker of lands is a position where you're looking at a piece of property, and you want that piece of property. You go out and you say, yeah, I want from the top of that mountain down here to the creek, and down here to the big old rock, and over this way. You go to the entry taker and you file that entry, and the entry taker then records that, and there's a certain amount of time that they hold that to make sure no one else comes in with another entry or is older than that or predates that or whatever. And he makes a determination that yes, you're eligible for that property. He issues a survey warrant to the county surveyor. The county surveyor goes out, surveys the property, and long story short, eventually you end up with that property after paying the fees and everything. That was a lucrative business for the Dobsons because he was the entry taker. His son, Joseph Jr., was the assistant county surveyor. And there are a number of records that indicate that the Dobsons owned a lot of land that they probably never even set foot on and never was really physically surveyed. But it ended up getting all passed down. So he was a pretty shrewd businessman. Matter of fact, at the time, let's skip a little bit to Joseph Jr., at the time of Joseph Dobson Jr.'s death, the Dobson family owned over 100,000 acres of land in western North Carolina. The majority of that was over along the Pigeon River and what's now in Tennessee. They had bought that or surveyed that out as speculation. Turns out nobody moved there until now. You think we own still Pigeon Forge, Dollywood, all that area of the Dobsons owned one time. They lost it all due to back taxes. Now, wrap up a little bit about Joseph Dobson Sr. The family story that my granddaddy, Aunt Barbara's daddy, told, and had been passed down, was that he was coming back from a friend's house, fell off his horse drunk into the Catawba River and drowned. Now, that had to be a true story. Nobody makes up a story like that. They might make up a story, say he actually was drunk and fell off his horse and drowned. The story you would tell on that was he jumped in the river to save a baby that was drowning or something like that and died while he was doing it. Nobody makes up he was drunk and fell off his horse. So it had to be a true story. Now, interesting thing in documentation. You always hear me harp on documentation. I found a really good piece of documentation. In the old Morgan and Store account book, which was one of the only stores in Morgan at the time, there's a entry for February the 17th, 1791, where Dr. Dobson came in and he purchased 3 or 4 items, some chewing tobacco and several other things. And the next entry in there, right below his for that same date, is Lyons, I think it was Robert Lyons, who bought 3 pints of rum. Well, when I looked at the 1790 census, you know where Robert Lyons lived? He was the next door neighbor to Dr. Dobson. So, maybe that story that Granddaddy Dobson told all those years ago, there might have been some actual truth in that. The pieces all fit together. So just think about what we're doing here on the 21st of February, if it was the 17th of February when Joseph Dobson Sr. died. So we're here marking his grave just a few days after his death. You can't get any more ironic than that. Not at all. So that's a little bit about Joseph Dobson Sr. that you might not know. Joseph Jr., now that's a whole nother story there. He is an interesting person, and all my close kin there that remember Granddaddy Dobson, he must have been just like Joseph Jr. He could tell a story. Good, he ain't Barbara. Yeah, and there was about that much truth in the story that Granddaddy Dobson told, but there was some truth in there. But he was a good storyteller, so that had to be a genetic trait that was passed down. There's a number of stories about Joseph Jr. that have been recorded in contemporaneously recorded from folks who actually were there and tended to write it down at the time. And I think it was, the name just left me, McIntyre, Thomas McIntyre, who was the son of the McIntyre who owned the tavern there in town, said that Joseph Dobson Jr. was an attendee at every session of court, either as a defendant, plaintiff, or observer, and said that after court, they had the occasion to go across the street there to McIntyre's Tavern and sit around the fire and they would tell stories. And they said on one occasion, they got to talking about hunting dogs and how good of a dog each person had. And Joseph Dobson said, well, I've got the best dog, not only in Burke County, surely in the entire state of North Carolina, if not the whole country itself. He said, I was hunting up on the chimneys, and the chimneys are just on the other side of Dobson's Knob right over there. And we've all been on the chimneys. I know all my kids have, and most of the grandkids have been across the chimney, so they could visualize what he was telling. He said that the path through there was really narrow, and there's a lot of switchbacks in through there, and they're razor sharp rocks. Said he had a dog that got caught on a deer track, and said that dog took off after that deer, chasing it, cut around one of those sharp turns in the path and ran straight on in one of those razor sharp rocks and split that dog right in half. He said, well, my father, who was a finished surgeon in the war, had always said if you press flesh back together immediately and hold it, it will knit itself back. He said, so I picked up those 2 halves of that dog and I slapped them together and held them tight and said, sure enough, they knitted back. He said, but in my haste, I got 2 legs going up and 2 legs going down. And he said, after that, when that dog would get on track for deer, he'd run like that for a little while, and then he'd flip over and run the other way. He said, that dog never got tired. Best dog ever was. And that's a story that was actually told by Joseph Dobson Jr. that somebody heard and had the forethought to write it down. Joseph Dobson Jr. was also, of course, a Revolutionary War veteran. And there's another good story that was written down at the time that Samuel McDowell wrote down, who had attended and said that his grandfather had put on a party, a meal for some of his old Revolutionary War veterans, and said that they decided that they were going to try to show their scars to who had the best scars as an old veteran. And said the old men started stripping their clothes off, pointing to this scar and to that scar and here and there, and said that they got in an argument about who had the best scars and got in an actual fist fight, but they soon calmed them down. And they've been into their cups a little bit, of course. And y'all that don't know the 18th century term, into your cups, they've been drinking pretty heavy. But said that they wouldn't accept any of Joseph Dobson's scars. So Joseph Dobson said, well, since you won't accept my scars, I'll just stand on the reputation of my family. And he said that, my brother, John Dobson, was killed at the Battle of Ramsor's Mill and is buried there. And said, surely I fought in a number of battles, but my father was a Finnish surgeon during the war and followed the army everywhere it went. And he said that one of the things that he did, he said, we were down at the Waxhaws, down near Hanging Rock, and said Tarleton's rear guard surprised us. And he said that one of Tarleton's dragoons came upon us and said one of our guys said that Tarleton's guys took a sword and cut the man's head clean off. And he said, of course, my father picked that man's head up and put it back on his shoulders and bandaged it up, and the blood started circulating again. Well, one of the other guys there that had told another story, Jimmy Bowles, said, did he live? And Dobson said, well, he was doing fine up until about the 3rd month of his recovery, and he caught a cold, and in the process of sneezing, blew his head clean off into the fire. To which Jimmy Bowles said, well, Dobson said, that's a damn lie. And Dobson said, that's right, Jimmy Bowles, it is, but my lie is much better than your lie. So, that's a little bit about the character of Joseph Dobson Jr. They lived right down the side of the hill as you turned off the main Lake James Road. If you come up on that second road there, maybe 100 yards or so, he lived off through there. This was called the old Montgomery Place one time. In 1787, Joseph Dobson Jr. bought this property here, and it became the Dobson Place after that. But at the time of the Battle of Kings Mountain, or prior to the Battle of Kings Mountain, this was the meeting place where Dobson and his brother-in-law, James Mackey, and along with 2 other men, would get information. Charles McDowell had lined it up where they would get information here, and Dobson and his brother-in-law left out and took that information across the mountains to Wilkes and Surrey counties. And the other 2 guys went across the mountain and went to the Watauga settlements. So there was a lot going on in this area. It was really important piece of our past history and our Revolutionary War history. So, and that's kind of what I wanted to get across, to know a little bit about the people, those 2 people themselves. And it's more than just a name and a date. That they were actual people, they lived actual lives, and they were probably fun people to be around. And I can see a lot of, in the people that I know, the family members that I know, probably the way those guys actually were. Yes, sir. That's named after Joseph Dobson Jr., who actually owned all the way to there. Right, it's named actually for Joseph Dobson Jr., specifically named for him. And there's another story that goes along with actually talking about the mountain. They talked about he killed the last elk killed here on that mountain. Just another little piece of history. That one was free. That didn't charge anything for that little piece of history there, that he killed the last elk in Burke County. All right, I appreciate you listening to me, and I hope I haven't bored you to death.
Somehow, Bill, I think the family gene of storytelling is well alive. I would, at the risk of lengthening your talk to the length of Robert's, would ask if you would to share with everyone the story about finding this site.
I can do that. Granny Dobson had always talked about the Dobson graveyard, and this property, which belonged to Joseph Dobson Jr., his son Alexander Dobson, who's buried right there, inherited after Joseph Jr. died. When Alexander Dobson died in 1878, I believe it was 76 or 78, the property was kind of divided up, and one of the heirs to that was my granddaddy Dobson's great grandfather, William McKesson Dobson, and so like I said, obviously Granddaddy Dobson grew up knowing the people who lived here, knowing where the place was. They would visit here and everything else. And he always said, it was on a hill above the old New Power Clubhouse, which sat right down there at one time, and overlooked Lake James. Like everything else, I should have got Granddaddy Dobson to take me over here to see it. But, you never get around to doing things like that. And it's not really important until it's too late to be important. Of course, none of this was built up. This was nothing but woods at all. Nothing. None of these houses, none of these trailers. It hadn't been cut. Timber hadn't been cut in years. There was nothing here. So another cousin of mine, Greg Allen, who's really interested in genealogy, he would come up and we would search for the Dobson graveyard. And I don't know, over a period of 10 or 15 years, when he would come up, we would come out and we'd look. And we could tell you every single hill it was not on. And you would be surprised how many of these little old hills have little graveyards like this, just stones. But we knew that the Dobson graveyard had at least one marked stone that was Alexander Dobson. My granddaddy told us that his name was on the stone. Well, one day we picked this hill to come to. Like I said, none of the houses or anything were here. We came up the side of that really steep hill, climbing hand over fist through the laurel thickets, and got up here, and sure enough, there was a little graveyard up through here, but there wasn't any stone. And as we were leaving, I kind of stuck my toe on something, reached down and wiped it off, and it was headstone. That headstone there had fallen over. And when I raised it up, wiped it down, there it was, Alexander Dobson. So we had actually found the place. And it was kind of quite by accident or deduction, whichever. But like I said, we searched probably at least a good 10 years on and off until we found it. And that was before my mother died, so it's been 30, 35 years ago at least when we found this place. And it didn't build up until what I call the recent past. None of this stuff was here at all. There was nothing here. And it's amazing that they were able to save what was here, that people had the forethought not to bulldoze this town. Because none of these little crosses were here. This mine was placed about 2 years ago by some cousins who live in the Louisiana area, who were related to John Dobson, the brother of Joseph Jr., who was killed at Ramseur's Mill in 1780. So it's amazing that this place is still here. But that's how we found it.
Thanks, Bill. That's an important story, not just for this family and this day, but I know in Burke County of several cemeteries that aren't, we think, just get online, look at Find a Grave, and there's the cemetery. There are lots of cemeteries that aren't in Find a Grave, that aren't in any register. The WPA missed them in when they did their survey. And part of what I want to do is go find those, find out who's in them. Because no doubt there are some Patriots there. We now would like to actually dedicate the markers to the Dobsons. We, the members of the Colonel Alexander Erwin Chapter, North Carolina Society, Sons of the American Revolution, dedicate these memorials to Joseph Dobson Sr. and Joseph Dobson Jr. for the glory of God and in recognition of the memory of Joseph Dobson Sr. and Joseph Dobson As we go from here, may these markers remind all who may pass by of the devotion and dedication of these and all patriots who have made our nation great. We should all be humbled and encouraged by these markers to the esteem and perpetuate these virtues with our lives. We are honored today to pay respect to the Patriots with these commemorative stones. We honor these men who, by their efforts and dedication, succeeded in bringing about this nation of free people, a community of patriotic Americans in this state and this country. May God grant them eternal peace. And now I would ask our Patriot Grave Marking Coordinator, Kevin Roney, to unveil the markers. In honoring these brave patriots, we also pay tribute to all men and women who have served our country with integrity and devotion. We dedicate ourselves anew to a faithful stewardship of the blessings of liberty that we all enjoy. I would now ask those who are rendering honors to please come forward when called. I'd like to start off with Roy Lightfoot, the North Carolina SAR historian and president of the Catawba Valley Chapter SAR. Kevin Roney, who's the Patriot Grave Coordinator for the Colonel Alexander Erwin Chapter. Paul Cashin, President, Daniel Morgan Chapter, South Carolina Sons of the American Revolution. Is there anyone else who would like to present honors this morning? Color Guard Commander, musket salute. complete the ceremony, as you visit the graves of these patriots, please place one carnation on each grave as a symbol of respect and gratitude for each patriot's service and sacrifice. This simple yet powerful gesture will help us pay tribute to their remarkable life and contribution. As I said at the beginning, this is one of the most important things that the sons of the American Revolution do. You'll see the stones that have been put in place. Those graves now are named for all who come. I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I'd like to thank God for keeping the rain away during this ceremony. Actually bringing the sun out for a moment or two. Color Guard Commander, retire the colors. The SAR recessional is in your program. Please join us. Until we meet again, let us remember our obligation to our forefathers who gave us the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, an independent Supreme Court, and a nation of free men. Marty will lead us in our benediction.
Let us pray. Gracious Father, thank you for making this a successful day. As we depart, we ask you to be with us. May your Spirit go with us on our journey home. Thank you for the strength and the hope. And thank you for this wonderful time that we shared. May we honor you in everything we do. May the souls of the faithful departed rest in peace, and may the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, guard our hearts, our minds. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
One last thing, Nick, if you want to get your camera ready, I'd like to recreate the moment when Bill asked all of the relatives to raise their hands so we can get a photograph of that moment. So if you're related, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, and please visit the grave sites. Watch your step. There are a lot of small stumps, stones, and otherwise. Thank you very much.